Shalom, shalom, Israel. Welcome back to another edition of Stick to the Script Current Events. My name is SHAMAR. Current events, aka Hebrew news. uh, you know, we're going to be talking about some of the events, some of the things that have happened, that have taken place within this recent time, just so that we're not ignorant of any matter, great or small. We're not ignorant of Satan's devices, and also to give an update as far as just things that are going on within the nation, within the world that pertain unto Israel. Don't let this be the extent or end of the research that you do, the knowledge that you find, or the things that you look into. This is just kind of I guess like a baseline, certain things that I've come across personally that I feel like are important to the nation or for the nation to know, and hopefully to create a spark within people to look into things for themselves. With that being said, let's take it over to the PowerPoint. Let's get into it. So, everybody heard the story of Ahmaud Arbery, right? Whether that was, I believe he was jogging and he was murdered. And so everybody's been waiting, pretty much holding their breath, trying to see what's going to be the verdict on his killers. And all three of them were sentenced to life in prison. All praises to the Most High. It says 3 white men who chased down and murdered 25-year-old black jogger Ahmaud Arbery in South Georgia were sentenced to life in prison Friday, with 2 having no chance of parole. Travis Michael, 35, his father, Gregory McMichael, 66, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan were convicted in November on a raft of charges, including felony murder for Arbery's death. Judge Timothy Walmsley sentenced the McMichaels to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Bryan was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. The 52-year-old will be eligible for parole under Georgia law only after he has served 30 years in prison because he was convicted of serious violent felonies. So he'll get a possibility of parole when he's 82. And I just want to give this scripture, Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. Because his brother, the actual man that they killed, he was 25 years old, a very young man. And he was literally just jogging around, his own neighborhood or jogging wherever he was at. And if you haven't seen the video, I encourage you to go and watch it, because they literally, as far as I know, they followed him for a little while. They end up hopping out on him, trying to talk to him for a minute. And then when he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't want to deal with the situation, they end up drawing down and killing him. So he was a young dude. And it wasn't like he did anything. They tried to spread a number of rumors and accusations, none of which, as far as I've seen, have ever been validated and proven. It was really just a Jake living his life, and of course Esau they hate that because they hate us. Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. So that's the first thing. We always, everybody's looking for Esau, especially of our people. Everybody's looking for Esau to come and save them, to pass legislation, to bring forth reform. It's to the point where Jakes is more worried about voting in the next president than we are our own businesses, schools, hospitals, anything like that. It's been Jakes just believing Esau repeatedly. Even with the vaccine, everybody trust the science. Look at this, look at that. This ain't the first time that they've come out with vaccines. This ain't the first time that they've encouraged us heavily to get involved in their experiments. And this isn't the first time that it's been, a misuse or a violation of that trust. But our people look in vain for a nation that cannot save us. Verse 18, they hunt our steps, that we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near, our days are fulfilled, for our end is come. So it literally said, the scriptures say they hunt our steps. This Jake, they was literally hunting his steps. Had no reason to stop him, had no reason to bother him. Tried to bring up some kind of justification as to why they stopped and killed him. But ultimately they were hunting. That's all it really boils down to. They see a Jake that was running in their neighborhood. They was on him. They wanted to hunt him, and ultimately they ended up killing him. So that's and this is not even, the unfortunate part about it is this is not even a unique circumstance. You know, our people are always being persecuted, being killed, being, you know, ridiculed and slandered just to be able to justify the fact that we're being killed when ultimately the hunt is on. It's just been open season. They try to make it seem like it's always some kind of rap. Oh, he had this, he had that. He was a convicted so-and-so. Okay, yeah, but does that mean he deserves to die? And this brother, as far as I know, he didn't even have a record. So they just killed an innocent man. They're hunting our steps. Verse 19, our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of the heaven. They pursued us upon the mountains. They laid wait for us in the wilderness. It don't matter where we go, whether, you know, we're down south, west, north, left, right, wherever Jakes are, that's where we find our persecutors trying to get involved, trying to inhibit, trying to kill. That's where we always find that our oppressors come in. So it says that, you can take us back over to the PowerPoint. So two of the killers were, and I believe that was the father and son. They're given life without the possibility of parole. They had a whole bunch of charges. And even though I don't know if they mentioned it in the article, they were very clearly racist. It says, before handing down the sentence, Wemsley held a moment of silence, saying it represents a fraction of the time Ahmaud Arbery was running through the neighborhood outside Brunswick before he was killed on February 23rd, 2020. He described the killing as a chilling, truly disturbing scene, telling the court, when I thought about this, I thought from a lot of different angles, and I kept coming back to the terror that must have been in the mind of the young man running through Satilla's shores. Arbery's mother and father cried as the sentences were handed down, according to a pool reporter present. Gregory McMichael leaned back in his chair and appeared visibly shaken, the reporter added, after his son was sentenced. So it's like, you know, his parents. I mean, it's just that's only the story of a Jake. That's only the story of Israel, to where we just hope for, at best, this. I mean, the crap that they call justice, that ain't gonna bring him back. He's gone. You know, his parents are never gonna be able to hug their son, to be able to see him again. They're never going to be able to. You know, they're not gonna get him back. So even for his killers to be locked up, you know, I understand it has its place, it has its merit, but it's not the same as if they had not done that. But ultimately, we're still, you know, we looking for our oppressors. We have to hope that they hold themselves accountable. We have to hope that they see the error in their own ways, because it's not like they're abiding by any kind of rules or laws that we abide by, and it's not like, as of yet, that we as a nation even have the power to be able to enforce our own laws. It says, earlier in the day, actually, let me see. The judge imposed additional prison time for each of the defendants for other felony charges. For the McMichaels, the additional time will be served concurrent to each other but consecutive to the life sentence. Wamsley ruled, as a result, both face total sentences of life without parole plus 20 years. For Brian, Wamsley imposed additional imprisonment sentences of 10 years for his false imprisonment conviction and 5 years for his criminal attempt to commit a felony conviction. Unlike the sentence for the McMichaels, the additional sentence for Brian, totaling 15 years, will be suspended, resulting in a total sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole. So it says, instead of closure, maybe it would be best to see today's proceedings as an exercise in accountability, the judge said. We are all accountable for our own actions. Today demonstrates that everybody is accountable to the rule of law. So they're trying to make this like some big win, some big, you know, victory, even though there were just, you know, how many other Edomites that have just gotten off, how many other big cases. And these are just on the Hollywood, you know, the commercialized cases that actually do make the news, that actually do get publicity. But there are so many of these cases that get swept under the rug that no one does anything about, or the killers walk off free. Tsunami advisories lifted in U.S. after waves hit Tonga following volcanic eruption. So if you haven't seen this, there was actually a, what do you call that, a tsunami warning for California not too long ago. What was that, last Saturday? They were saying that there was a potential, you know, for a tsunami to hit the coast. So it was an underwater volcano in the South Pacific erupted violently on Saturday, causing tsunamis to hit Hawaii, Japan, and Tonga's largest island, Tonga Tapu, sending waves flooding into the capital. The Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcano, say that 3 times fast, about 30 kilometers, which is 18.6 miles, southeast of Tonga's Afau Island, first erupted on Friday and a second time on Saturday around 5:26 p.m. local time. The eruption sent a plume of ash, gas, and steam 12 miles into the air. Satellite imagery showed a massive ash cloud and shockwaves spreading from the eruption. Ash was falling into the sky from the Tonga capital Saturday evening, and phone connections were down. So I'm going to see if I can get this. You were able to see it from space even.
Splitting into the capital. This happened after an underwater volcano, and you can see it right here. Pacific, it exploded in that violent eruption. That satellite video that caught it.
Let's bring in meteorologist Allison Chinchar. Allison, what do we know about the tsunami?
Right, so it actually happened last night Eastern time. It basically happened at 5:27 p.m. on the 14th. That would have been 11 p.m. last night Eastern time. And very locally, some high tsunami waves in and around right where the volcanic eruption took place. Now, some really fascinating video coming in. Take a look at this. Again, you can see the initial eruption there and the subsequent shock wave that takes place because of the eruption. Again, you can see kind of around the outer edges here after the eruption takes place. Again, just really incredible to kind of show the scope of the volcanic eruption. But yes, it was an underwater volcano. So again, as it's pushing up, it's displacing some of that water around it. So you are going to get some decent sized tsunami waves, again, around the local region here. So you had several around Tonga, Vanuatu, Hawaii, and then Norfolk Island, Australia, ending up with the highest, at least so far, observed wave at about 4.2 feet. Now, one thing to note, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, they're all keeping a very close eye on this. They are saying that if there were any unusual wave heights to arrive along the west coast of the U.S., it wouldn't be until about 6:15 a.m. Pacific time or about 9:15 a.m. Eastern time.
So, and it's crazy.
When you're a small business,
I don't need that. And it's crazy. I'm going to get this scripture real quick. Amos chapter 9 and verse 10. All the sinners all the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, which say the evil shall not overtake nor prevent us. And it's like, okay, well, why is he getting that scripture? Because for one, you see our people as a whole, as the vast majority of Israel, so many people feel like they have this space, whether it's a space of mercy. Oh, I was talking to a sister the other day, pants and fringes, simple stuff like basics in the law. These are things that you're totally in control of. As far as understanding, as far as the research and history and all these other things that we have to really go into to be able to understand, I think that for the most part, all of Israel can understand fringes, and we can understand that Deuteronomy 20:25, that women aren't supposed to wear pants. That's like Israelite 101, right? Talking about that. Oh, I know the Most High. The Most High is not that simple. I said, so what part of the scripture makes you think that it's not that simple, that it's not this? Oh, well, I'm in the spirit and I'm doing it. I was like, dude, that's the kind of conversation that's like people who believe that the evil won't overtake them. They think that they have some extra special case of faith and mercy being given to them. And so many people are banking on that, not willing to make those small tweaks and worthy sacrifices to be able to be acceptable in the Most High sight, but banking on some kind of special it factor, saying, oh, that the evil's not going to overtake us. And a lot of times we get complacent. I say we because I'd be lying if I said I wasn't guilty of it. A lot of times we get so caught up in our mundane, the monotony of life. Wake up, go to work, go to sleep. Wake up, go to work, go to sleep. Wake up Sabbath. Okay. You got your Sunday, you got your weekend, then wake up, go to work, Then it's like ultimately sometimes we're in a place where this is by design. We're in a place where a lot of times we don't even have the time to really sit and focus and meditate and get ourselves together. And then it'd be something like this, and it's like, man, however together you got it, that might be the end. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to be, an event that takes us out, an earthquake that takes us out, a war that takes us out. We don't know what it's going to be, but a lot of us, we can get complacent and we can sit back, and ultimately you never know when that judgment is going to come. You never know when it's going to be your time. We never know. This happened quickly. It wasn't even supposed to rain that day. It was bright, sunny days in the forecast, and next thing you know, before the day was over, it had rained a couple of times with a tsunami advisory in place. So we never know when it's going to happen, but we can't be in a place where we say, we got time, because Most High could rattle this cage right now as we sitting here. We never know. So ultimately, don't get into that place. The scriptures say don't make any tarrying to turn to the Lord. Take us back over to the PowerPoint. So it says, an underwater volcano in the South Pacific erupted violently on Saturday, causing tsunamis to hit Hawaii, Japan, and Tonga's largest island. The eruption caused a severe tsunami on Tongatapu, where the capital is located, with waves following onto coastal roads and flooding properties on Saturday. The tsunami had a significant impact on Nuku'alofa, with boats and large boulders washed ashore and shops along the coast damaged, she added. We drop down. Telecommunications were affected, though it's not clear how widespread the damage is yet, Arden said, adding the main undersea cable has been impacted, likely due to loss of power. And this tsunami was powerful enough to where, or this explosion was powerful enough to where it hit, from Hawaii on this side of the world all the way to the eastern parts of Japan. The eruption also had effects across the Pacific, as tsunami warnings and advisories were issued from parts of New Zealand and Japan to the United States and Canada's British Columbia. Per the National Weather Service, a tsunami warning means those nearby should get inland or seek higher ground immediately, while an advisory means they should stay away from the shore and out of the water. So that's how the weekend went. And for some places in the world, this was in Tongatapu. This was in Hawaii. They actually experienced the tsunami firsthand. And Cali, it really didn't come in that far and not that much inland. But you never know. It literally, things can change just that quickly. You can take us back. Check this one out. A rocket booster could crash into the moon in the next few weeks. A rogue rocket booster could collide with the moon in the next few weeks, according to space experts, an event that could leave a crater on the far side of the moon. The SpaceX Falcon rocket stage was used in 2015 to launch the U.S. Deep Space Climate Observatory, or DISCOVER, and has been floating around in the outer part of the Earth-Moon system ever since. Bill Gray, an independent researcher focused on orbital dynamics, who was the first to publicize the imminent collision, said by his calculations the rocket part would hit the moon a bit north of its equator within a minute of 7:26 a.m. on March 4th. The way the object is moving makes it difficult to pinpoint the exact location, he added, although it is likely to change only by a few kilometers. So ESA launched something into space some years ago, and now they're losing control of it, or it's already been rogue, and now it's on a collision course with the moon. They're saying that it's just going to blow a decent-sized crater into the moon, but, it's still, you see a lot of different things that Esau is mounting up for, stuff that really don't make sense to the world, stuff that if you just look at it for face value, it's like, well, what does that mean? They, after all those years of having the military, they had the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Special Forces, they had their normal categories, and then it's like Space Force. Defend the planet. All these movies you see about this threat from the sky, all these, all this propaganda about the enemy from the sky that's going to be coming, Independence Day, Legion, all these, what was the Tomorrow War, all these movies telling the same thing. And it's always interesting because there's always this fascination with the moon. Star Wars, the what was it called? What is it called in Star Wars? The Death Star. It's just all these different things that Esau keeps putting out there, and it makes you curious because when they say, like, oh, we've lost control of something that's going to collide with the moon, like, I wonder how much of an accident and how much of an actual test of their own ballistic capabilities it is, because we know that Esau is not just going to submit and lie down and give up his kingdom. He wants to fight against the Most High. That's why you have all these ground-to-air missiles, all these IB, all these different weapons that are being developed to be able to fight, this unknown enemy, this unknown threat. The Space Force is real. You know, people laugh at it and joke at it, but Esau is really preparing to be able to not only war with the saints, but to be able to war with our God. And you know, that's what I really feel like. That's what this is, and that's why it carries a weight and an importance. Because I highly doubt that it's something that's just random. You telling me it's been floating in space for going on 7 years, and it's never either gone outside of the orbit of Earth or the moon, and it's never crashed sooner? I don't know. I'm not sure. So it goes on further, and it goes into a bunch of different other things as far as scientific phenomena, but that's not what I'm going to go into. So this disappearing space object is emitting giant, highly polarized radio bursts every 20 minutes. So speaking of things that are in space and the unknown, there is a recently discovered object in space that's literally just giving off bursts of radio frequency. Astronomers have discovered a really weird object 4,000 light years away from Earth, a study published in Nature on Wednesday said. The object disappears from view every other minute and emits a giant burst of radio waves 3 times an hour. So 4,000 light years away from Earth. That's extremely far. I don't know the exact calculation of a light year, but I know it's far more than an actual Earth, what do you call that? An Earth mile. So it's 4,000 light years away. It disappears every other minute, and it sends out a burst of radio waves every 20 minutes. That's calculated. That's an object with a specific purpose. And, you know, this whole Big Bang Theory, everything's random. We don't know what's going on. The Most High created the universe with order. There are things out there that we are yet to see, things that are out there that Esau will never discover as much as he'll invest in his technology and, you know, in his exploration. You still finding things like this, and who knows what that is or what it's for? Only the Most High. The mysterious object was first seen by Curtin University student Tyrone O'Doherty, okay, when he was observing the sky in outback Western Australia. It's exciting that the source I identified last year has turned out to be such a peculiar object. Slower transients such as supernova can appear in a few days and stick around for a couple of months. Fast transients, like some neutron stars, flash on and off a couple times in a second, but transients in between those two speeds are rare, and the latest discovery, in the words of the astronomers, is really weird and completely unexpected. So imagine, you know, just something, and this is obviously CGI, something out there in space just doing this, just bursting energy and just, I mean, who, you know, what is it for? What is it going to do? When is it going to do it? So much in the heavens and in the celestial bodies that the Most High created that we can't even begin to understand or understand the purpose of. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that, said astrophysicist Dr. Natasha Hurley-Walker, who led the team of scientists, and it's really quite close to us, about 4,000 light years away. It's in our galactic backyard. So they're talking about, you know, it's pretty close. Obviously, it can close the distance with some speed. They're not sure what it does, and they're like, you know, it's at this point Esau already knows. Like they can see the signs. They're like, man, we're discovering stuff all the time. Their technology is getting better, but what does that account for? What does that really mean when there are things out there in space like this? All this time the telescope's been around since whenever Galileo lived. You just had telescopes for hundreds of years, and they're still just now discovering things out in deep space that they've never even seen and don't understand the purpose of. Esau is not in control as they try to make it seem. They don't have as much power, as much pull as they try to convince us of. They can't explain this. They're not in control of it. There's a limit to what he's able to do. Man's wisdom is foolishness with the Most High. And this is a prime example. Who knows what that is? Or who knows if we'll see it in our lifetime. But it's out there. And it's been created, and I am sure it has a purpose. It's a type of slowly spinning neutron star that has been predicted to exist theoretically, Hewer Walker said. But nobody expected to directly detect one like this because we didn't expect them to be so bright. Somehow, it's converting magnetic energy to radio waves much more efficiently than anything we've seen before. The astronomers currently believe that it may be a rare type of neutron star or a collapsing white dwarf, but they need to observe it again to determine if it is a fluke or a new type of space object. So, shifting over, I try to keep it sectional. We got to talk about COVID. Got to talk about all these things that Esau is doing in the earth under the brand of we're going to get back to normal. Just hold on a little bit more. Just follow this guideline. Here's a new mandate. Here's this. Here's that. Well, here's something that I feel like hasn't been broadcasted as much. They already have internment camps set up. The Washington state legislature is slated to vote on a measure that will authorize the involuntary detainment of residents as young as 5 years old in COVID-19 concentration camps for failing to comply with the state's experimental vaccine mandate. Wow. Get your dictionaries out. Because, boy, I tell you, the devil's in the details. Esau it be the small little it's the diction that they use that really tells you. Vote on a measure that will authorize the involuntary detainment. That means you will be involuntarily arrested, right? Taken from your home. Will they have to knock? Will they be authorized to break down the door? Do you have to sign paperwork like getting written up at work, or are they just going to snatch you out the bed? It's involuntary detainment of residents as young as 5 years old. So imagine that, right? Esau has already been doing this for quite some time. The vaccine is not going to be mandatory. It's not going to be mandated, but they continue to strip people of freedoms and opportunities and leisures that we've become accustomed to. So a lot of people become uncomfortable, and they're like, man, forget it. Take my chances. I want my life to go back to the way that it used to be. We're creatures of habit, right? But this says residents as young as 5 years old. So imagine Esau says, okay, you don't have to take the vaccine, but they have the right to seize, the involuntary detainment. They can detain you as young as 5 years old. As young as 5 years old. So imagine if they say, okay, we're not going to force you to take the vaccine, the jab, but we will come in and, we have to confiscate your child because we deem that you are a biological threat being unvaccinated. We're going to take your 5-year-old, we're going to get them vaccinated, and we'll release them to you once you're vaccinated and we know that the child will be safe. How far-fetched is that? With all the other things that Esau has done, with all the other things that they've orchestrated, all the other oppression that they enact, how far-fetched is it to say? Because why would they include up to 5 years old? Someone somewhere had to sit down, and they had to say, what's going to be the age limit? What's going to be the cap? How far are we willing to go? And they said 5. They won't take an infant. They won't take a baby. Not yet. But a 5-year-old and up, anyone can be involuntarily detained for not abiding by or complying with the state's, and then here comes some more diction, experimental vaccine mandate. This is something they're trying out, something that they're trying to see, okay, well, how well can it work? How well can we get it to work? What are going to be the consequences and ramifications? Because Esau is literally just a mad scientist. They're trying out all these different things, making people guinea pigs, see if this works, see what that works. Okay, look, man, he had a heart attack. Write that down. Esau is just using the world as their guinea pigs. So it's an experiment within that particular state, and I guarantee you, if it goes well for Washington, you can expect that it's going to hit another major city. It's probably going to be in Cali, then New York, Texas. It's going to hit other major cities where they expect to be able to, they expect to find similar results. But that's where it's at, right? It says, if passed, WAC 246-100 will allow local health officers at his other sole discretion to issue an emergency, wait a minute, allow local health officers at his other sole discretion to issue an emergency detention order causing a person or group of persons to be immediately detained for the purposes of isolation or quarantine. So if it's at the officer's sole discretion, first off, that sounds like cops, right? Cops that are able to arrest you and take you away for any number of reasons. But now they can say, look, we're doing this for your own good. Man, I tell you about the forced help. This is for your own good. We're going to separate you and your children for your own good. Esau claims that they helping. They claim that they're doing the right thing, that they're going to solve it. Nah. They're going to be able to take people's kids away legally, be able to arrest people and detain them for weeks at a time legally. Well, we think he had COVID. Did you cough? Did you irritate an officer who now has the power to strip your freedom at any time under this banner of protection, freedom, the right to serve? It's just literally, the abuse of power just going further and further. Esau finding more legislation, finding more opportunity, finding more, excuse to be able to do wickedly. All the while promising that, okay, this is the last time. All you got to do, look, just follow along with us a little bit longer. Don't you? You want everything to go back to normal, right? You want everything to be how you used to. You want to be able to go here and whoop-de-whoop. Do this. The Psalms 94:20, it says, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law. That's the throne of iniquity. That's King Wicked. Esau stays, look at what they're doing in the earth. You can't, I don't see how brothers come up with this, oh, Esau is the Arabs, Esau is this, Esau is that. Even the Arabs are subject to the white man. They getting hit with tariffs and taxes and, legislation. They get hit with bombs. They get their support cut. Esau make all the weapons. Esau manufacturing, the biggest guns. They sit up here and, we don't want to go with this deal anymore. Okay, no problem. We'll pull the troops out. Just like they recently did in Afghanistan. They just pulled everybody out. Everybody was terrified. What are we going to do now? People working against the Taliban and all that kind of stuff. What are we going to do now? We were promised protection. Protection leaves in 2 weeks. They got control of their country again. And they left a whole bunch of stuff. They framing mischief by law. Esau is literally just, anytime that they need something done, they write on a piece of paper, they approve it. A group of Edomites and of their peers stamp it. Okay, cool. This is legislation now. This is law now. Going against this means that you're going against this kingdom. And it's that simple. It says, health officers are required to provide documentation proving unvaccinated residents subject to detention have denied requests for medical examination, testing, treatment, counseling, vaccination, decontamination of persons or animals, isolation, quarantine and inspection, and closure of facilities prior to involuntary confining unvaccinated residents in quarantine facilities, the proposal states. First off, that sounds good. See how long it lasts. Second off, look at all the different things that you're going to have to go through or potentially be subject to just so that you won't be detained. Request for a medical examination, so you got to get tested. I don't know, man. That cough sounded kind of COVID-ish. You got to get tested. Actually, here's the thing, right? I'm big on words. Request for medical examination, and then right next to that, testing. So if a request for a medical examination is not the testing, then what is this going to be? Medical examination? That could literally mean anything. Testing, treatment. This is, okay, I'm assuming that means that you're already positive. Counseling. I don't want to, be subject to something that has been, recently released. Oh, well, you know what? Come to this counseling. We're going to talk to you about it. Vaccination, decontamination, vaccination. So that's what they really pushing for. They threw a whole lot of stuff in there. That's what they're really looking for you to be able to do. Decontamination of persons or animals. Imagine that. You walking down the street. Imagine you walking down the street and your dog sneeze. And a cop is like, whoa, your dog sounds sick. That dog needs to be decontaminated. Ma'am, I need you to relinquish the animal. You're like, yo, I live right here. The dog's not sick. It's dusty. Nope. You need to be, that animal needs to be decontaminated. Is that an inside dog? It lives with you? You need to decontaminate your whole apartment. Ma'am, do you have somewhere you can stay for the next 20 days? Whoa. And then if you deny that, saying, nah, I don't want to, he taking it too far. I don't want my stuff decontaminated. I don't have anywhere I can go for 20 days. Government's not providing it. So you decline, then guess what? Well, now they got to put you through the process. Will you get vaccinated? Well, get counseled for 2.5 hours. Why aren't you getting vaccinated? Well, why won't you do this? Well, why won't you do that? Isolation, and they got to split you up for 20 days. Well, we'll keep you in a facility for 18 of those days, but then you won't be allowed to, or let's just say they keep you on, what is the guideline now, 10 days. Well, we'll put you in a facility for 10 days for you to properly isolate, during which time we'll decontaminate your dog, but you won't be able to enter your apartment for another 10 days for proper cleaning. Where is that leave? Where is that going to leave people? What's going to be the recourse with that? Quarantine and inspection and closure of facilities. So you own a business. Business got to run. Maybe it's a startup. You done poured everything you got, your last $4,500, whatever amount of money that you got, and somebody arrests you or you get detained because you refuse decontamination of your house belongings or animals. You refuse, come on now. Look at all the different things that this is really going to give them the power to be able to do. And who knows how many of them you're going to be subject to before they either decide to detain you or decide to release you. Prior to involuntary confining unvaccinated residents in quarantine facilities. According to W-246, I'm going to just call it that for time, local health officer may invoke the powers of police officers, sheriffs, constables, and all other officers and employees of any political subdivisions within the jurisdiction of the health department to enforce immediately orders given to effectuate the purposes of this section in accordance with the provisions of RCW. So what that basically means is they have the power of an officer, they have the power of a sheriff, of a constable, and any other office or employee of any political subdivision within the health department, basically to be able to get what they need done. They can seize any level of power within a police officer, sheriff, constable, or any other officer and employee of any political subdivision within the jurisdiction of the health department. They can assume that position temporarily or permanently to enforce immediately orders given to effectuate the purposes of this section. And the purpose of this section is to detain. That's the stipulations that have been laid out. So they pretty much have a limitless supply of power and pool that they can pull from within the health department, which is government, mind you, so it goes from top to bottom. There's going to be a position in there somewhere where they're able to say, okay, I deem that you're medically unfit, I deem that you're insane, I deem that you're a threat to others under this code in this section, I need to arrest you. I mean, it's literally going to be that simple. The emergency detention order legalizes the isolation and detainment of American citizens who fail to voluntarily comply with COVID gene therapy shots for a period not to exceed 10 days. So imagine that. You're saying, I don't want the vaccine. They say, okay, we'll go through COVID gene therapy. What does that mean? Okay. Then you say, okay, well, maybe you get the shot the first day. You get COVID gene therapy. Oh, that made me feel sick. I don't want to go through with this. Well, sir, you have 9 more days and 9 more treatments. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, then we'll have to arrest you. We'll have to involuntarily detain you because you're refusing to comply with the COVID gene therapy shots. And it's for a period. We need to give you COVID gene therapy for 10 days. I mean, man, it's insane. However, a judge may extend the first forced quarantine for a period not to exceed 30 days. So imagine you off the public face, right? Everybody just know that you got picked up. Yeah, so-and-so, he got arrested by a public health officer. They throw you in. They like, all right, we're going to give you this gene therapy for 10 days. It's making you feel sick. I'm not comfortable. I don't want this. Well, now a judge, instead of giving the individual some kind of rights, they're saying a judge has more rights to be able to come in and extend the period of time. Well, you know what? He wouldn't comply for 10 days. Give him another 20. That's 30 days that you away from work, 30 days you away from family, away from your kids, your pets, whatever it is that you just in total isolation. Like, basically, you're a prisoner. You're literally a prisoner for what could easily be 30 days if you refuse vaccination. Let me read this as it is. However, a judge may extend the forced quarantine for a period not to exceed 30 days if the segregated individual or family persists to refuse vaccination. So they can throw you in for 30 days because they're saying, look, he still just won't get it. He still just won't bow down. He just won't take it. Give him another 10 days in the hole, see how he feels. Give him another 20 days of this and see if he's willing to comply. And then we'll see what happens. And again, I mean, you can see how far that can go and how quickly that can become, destructive. And on top of COVID, right, LA sees a 12% spike in homicides. Los Angeles is not alone in this trend, Mayor Garcetti says. Los Angeles saw spikes in select categories of crime in 2021, most notably a nearly 12% year-over-year climb in homicides. But the mayor and police chief say redeployments of officers and a focus on getting guns off the streets are preventing the numbers from soaring much higher. Well, they're already soaring 12%. I mean, okay. Among the other notable statistics was the 11.8% increase in homicides, while violent crime increased 3.9% and property crimes rose by 4.2%. The number of people shot rose by 9%. Mayor Garcetti and LAPD Chief Michael Moore both acknowledged the increases, but the mayor noted that the pace of homicides was stemmed in the second half of the year. To put that in context, I remember the first half of this past year when those numbers were well north of 25%, Garcetti said of the homicide rate. The mayor also reminded people that LA is not the only city experiencing an increase in violent crime, which is happening in major cities across the U.S. amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So one thing, noted the pace of the homicides stemmed in the second half of the year. Why is that important? Second half of the year, June is the 6-month mark. So from July to December, that's when the vast majority of the homicides took place. Because you got July, September, October. You got go from the heat of the summer to the so-called holidays being Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. That's when all the crime was taking place. That's when the vast majority of everything was happening. But why? Because on top of COVID, people are trying to partake in what they've already known, these folly days. So everybody you got to have the gifts. You trying to impress people. Everybody trying to come together, have this big old dinner. The inflation has skyrocketed. The price of everything. Turkeys is $50 or $60. And people rely on those things. People find peace in those things. They looking for the things that they like and they enjoy and that they've relied on to be consistent. They ain't got $60 for a turkey. People gonna go find it. They're going to find a way to be able to provide that. They're going to break into houses, break into cars. They robbing places. You see all these smash and grab robberies taking place, especially in L.A. People running in the Gucci store, the Louis store, the whatever, just snatching thousands of dollars worth of stuff, hopping in a getaway car and leaving. Crime rate is way up. And then on top of all of it, you got the pandemic. So a lot of people not working. The unemployment dried up. The extra bonus they was given dried up. People looking for, they looking for what they need. And it says Los Angeles is not alone. Now, put it in context again. The 6 most populous cities in America, besides New York, this is the safest city when it comes to homicides. In Chicago and Philadelphia and Houston, and even in Phoenix, those numbers are higher, Garcetti said. He also added that the last 10 years have been the safest decade on record in LA's history, despite the recent uptick in crime. So LA been destined for this. I mean, that's terrible. If the percentages are up, 12%, 7%, 4%, and this is still the safest 10 years LA has ever had, that just shows you the terrible conditions of LA. The 90s, the 80s, the crack, the gangs, all that stuff. I mean, if you comparing it to that, the crack epidemic and, the gangs when they first got started, sure, I mean, I guess we doing better. When you look at it as a whole and living through these days, these streets ain't nothing to play with. Garcetti said that over the past year, 8,650 illegal firearms were taken off our streets thanks to the men and women of this department and our partners in federal law enforcement. That is a big number. We're talking about just LA. 8,000, that's almost 9,000. So that's what, about 3 weapons a day being taken off? Let me see, 8650, I'm curious. 23 actually. So pretty much about 23 going on 24 weapons were seized a day just in LA County, illegal guns that were seized just in LA County by law enforcement. Moore said the creation of a violent crime task force put more officers on the streets and on foot patrols, interacting with residents and community groups. Dropping down, our homicide arrests with those added resources increased 37%. 429 homicide arrests last year, he said. That's a 47% increase from 2 years ago. So look at that. So LA, they saying it's at least been safer by comparison, but it's still a huge spike in crime. I intended this to be up here. Going back to some COVID real quick. Yeah. Flu-rona. So another month, another variant. You got Omicron, which is already out there, right? That's the newest, more infectious strain of COVID that they say is taking place. And then on top of that, you have Flu-rona. A coronavirus testing site in Los Angeles County announced Wednesday that it has detected its first Flu-rona case, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Cases of Flu-rona, a co-infection of the flu and the coronavirus, have been detected in several countries, including the U.S., Israel, and Brazil, and have been happening long before the term became popular. So look at that. Instead of another variant, the sicknesses are teaming up. You can have the flu and COVID. A New York hospital in early 2020 found one case involving a patient who tested positive for both COVID-19 and the flu. The recent case in LA County involved a teenager who had recently returned from Cabo San Lucas and tested positive for both viruses at a testing site at the Getty Center in Brentwood. Steve Farzam of 911 COVID testing announced in a media briefing Wednesday. The child had very mild cold-like symptoms, Farzam said. LA County Department of Public Health said it does not systematically track concurrent infections and did not confirm the case or have information on how frequently Flu-rona cases have occurred in LA County. So even that, I mean, that's kind of, as much as they're tracking COVID and as much as they're tracking everything else, Flu-rona has just been around and they just haven't been saying anything. It makes you think that either they really just, it doesn't exist, or they don't care for people to know that it exists. He said the medical center had a handful of Flu-rona cases in March and April, and they involved patients in the intensive care unit. So people are getting put in the ICU. We saw this early on in the pandemic where patients were diagnosed with COVID had other respiratory viruses, Yediger said. And in this case, is the resurgence of the influenza virus as well as a concurrent infection with COVID-19. So imagine that. That's going to be the next big thing. The symptoms, fever or chills. cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, muscle pain or body aches, headache, vomiting and diarrhea, change in loss of taste or smell, although this is more frequent with COVID-19. So pretty much you feel anything. You got something. Your head hurting, you're hot, you're too cold, you can't breathe, you're tired, you're sore, you're sick. There's a long list of options that, it's just everything is COVID or everything is flu now. This is what we just saw. Flipping over. Imagine this. Authorities find 100 bags of fentanyl in the bedroom of a 13-year-old who died of an overdose. So I remember last month, fentanyl is now the #1 leading cause of death. I believe the age group is 18 to 45 in the U.S. It's not car accidents, not drunk driving, it's not, heart attacks or even bad eating. It is fentanyl. It's a highly addictive drug. And however it happened, this 13-year-old overdosed on it and had 100 bags of fentanyl in the bedroom. So it says some 100 bags of fentanyl were found in the bedroom of a 13-year-old boy who overdosed and died earlier this month, according to Hartford police. An investigation into how the teenager came into possession of the powerful opioid is currently underway. On January 13th, the teenager was rushed from the Sports and Medical Science Academy in Hartford to the hospital after falling unconscious. 2 other students who reported dizziness were also transported to the Children's Medical Center for evaluation. Drug tests later confirmed that fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that's up to 100 times stronger than morphine, was in a substance located near the students. Authorities believe all 3 came in contact with the substance at the same time. It's crazy. I wonder what that is. Just being a researcher, like just looking into things, it really doesn't make sense how you get all these details and all these, all that specificity, and then you say it's a substance located near the students. What is that? What does that mean? Imagine someone did die. They're like, okay, your kid got drugged, and they're just like, yeah, they came in contact with a substance that was near them. Was it in the classroom? Was it in the air? Was it in the water? Did they leave school and touch something? What did they touch? How did the fentanyl enter their system through their fingers? There are so many questions with that. But this kid, and it's crazy because he was 13. It says the 13-year-old boy, died 2 days later. Police said the 2 other students recovered and were later released from the hospital. The school was put into a lockdown, and investigators said drug-detecting canines found around 40 bags of fentanyl at the school. Hours later, the lockdown was lifted, and students were dismissed. No other injuries were reported. So you got to be careful with your kids, man. All the stuff that kids are being exposed to, especially on the internet, perverts and predators, drug dealers, a lot of that stuff, you see that stuff's happening on video games now. People, what was it? It was, I want to say maybe about a year ago, some convicted sex offender was on Roblox playing with the kids, talking to the kids, saying stuff. Then you have people getting arrested off of PlayStation and Xbox Live because they're making drug transactions. So all that stuff is happening. So many people rely on entertainment because it's simple to be able to say, here, hand your kid a screen. And honestly, that's even where everything's going. People don't really socially interact the same way. As we get older, it's decreasing more and more, but even the generation that's coming up, the kids, they're really more so technology than they are actual social interaction. A bunch of kids get together, they're going to all pull out iPads. They sit in a circle all on iPads. So, the internet it's a vast and dangerous place. So they found 40 other bags of fentanyl at the school, and 100 of them were in the room of that kid that actually overdosed. So, it sounds like somebody gave him the bags. Somebody's obviously at the school distributing, and, it cost him his life. And 2 other kids were sick from it. There isn't any evidence to suggest that anyone besides the teen who has not been named, brought the bags of fentanyl to school. So he was a supplier. He was functioning as a plug and the connect to get everybody what they needed. Our officials said, and they are confident that the same fentanyl found in his bedroom was what caused his overdose. Excuse me. So he was given a whole bunch of a drug. Being a young teenager, obviously, at some point tried some. And he has access to all these different bags, and he not selling them that fast, obviously, to where he has no time to do them himself. Got hooked, got addicted, got high and overdosed. The bags were collected by law enforcement and given to the FDA, which later determined the drugs have an extremely high purity level at 58 to 60%. According to Hartford Police Sergeant Chris, a bag of fentanyl normally tests around 2% pure per bag. So he had the strongest stuff that they've probably seen versus the 2% that it usually is. It was about 50 times stronger than an already very strong bag of fentanyl, he said Tuesday night at a town hall meeting. The bags of fentanyl will undergo further testing, including fingerprint and DNA testing, to try to determine who gave the teenager the drugs. A person of interest who has a history with narcotics in the house where the drugs were found has been identified by police. That person is not a suspect at this time. Some more into the chaos. U.S. warns that chip shortage could shut down factories. The U.S. supply of computer chips has fallen to alarmingly low levels, raising the prospect of factory shutdowns, the Commerce Department reported Tuesday. Companies that use semiconductors are down to less than 5 days of inventory, a sharp drop from 40 days in 2019, according to a department survey of 150 companies. The chips used in the production of automobiles and medical devices are especially scarce. So look at this, man. We talk about it all the time. America's on the verge of collapse. It's getting closer. They need these chips for automobiles and medical devices. I think the supply got put, a big strain got put on the supply during COVID for breathalyzers. But they also go into automobiles. So if this continues and continues to decline, there will be no new cars and no new medical equipment. Imagine that, right? But then on top of that, actually, I'm sure they're going to talk about it. Demand for the chips, department said, was up 17% last year for 2019. Citing the results, the Biden administration called on Congress to pass stalled legislation that would provide $52 billion for domestic semiconductor production. The semiconductor supply chain remains fragile, and it is essential that Congress pass CHIPS funding as soon as possible, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said in a statement. With skyrocketing demand and full utilization of existing manufacturing facilities, it's clear the only solution to solve this crisis in the long term is to rebuild our domestic manufacturing capabilities. Chip shortages have disrupted auto production and driven up car prices, contributing significantly to a 7% year-over-year increase in consumer prices last month, the hottest inflation in 4 decades. Still, it would take years for semiconductor factories to begin operations. So they're saying, they're hoping to get all these billions of dollars to be able to even pass things from 2019 to 2020 to 2021, and now we're in 2022. The demand has gone up year after year, and inflation is at an all-time high within a 40-year period. They're saying, okay, we can get all this money, we'll start producing our own, but it could take years just for them to be able to get started. And who knows how many, because, okay, not only will new cars not be able to be produced, all right, there should be plenty of cars out there for people to drive. Breathalyzers and medical equipment, well, that's much more of a priority. But even then, imagine if all these factories in America that use microchips, which is the vast majority, at least that are producing any kind of technology or computer, which is in everything, imagine if they all shut down. That's goods that are no longer being produced. That's jobs that are no longer being held. Paychecks, the economy, all the effects that's going to have simply because there aren't enough microchips. Never know how it's going to happen, but we know it's going to. Texas brothers beat stepfather to death who was accused of sexually assaulting their sister. Says a Texas man whom authorities investigated for sexually assaulting a child was found allegedly beaten to death by 3 teenagers, 2 of whom were the man's stepsons, police say. Police in Pharr, which is located in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, announced this week the arrest of 18-year-old Alejandro Trevino, 17-year-old Christian Trevino, and 18-year-old Juan Eduardo Melendez. The town's police sheriff, Andy Harvey, identified Alejandro and Christian as stepsons of Gabriel Quintanilla, whose body was found, Gabriel Quintanilla, whose body was found in an open field by a farmer on January 20th. Quintanilla had been in a national database since 2019 after another minor claimed he had sexually abused her between 2014 and 2016. Quintanilla has been on the run from authorities ever since until his body was found. So he's been a menace, been, sick and wicked. Another minor also brought up the same sexual abuse claim between 2014 and 2016. So she's saying a 2-year period that she was being abused. And he was on the run since 2016. Quintanilla has been on the run from authority ever since until his body was found. Harvey said in a press conference Wednesday afternoon, the detectives went out to look for Quintanilla at that time and were unable to find him. They searched. They went to his last known residence. They went to his mother's residence multiple times. I just don't see that. I just don't see how somebody for 6 years could escape all authority. Saying that they don't have the resources is one thing, but to say that they was looking for him all this time, I mean, come on. You got cameras, you got fingerprints. Dude had credit cards, debit cards, a cell phone. 6 years? He had to have made a mistake. Police reports, KRGV reports that police said the teen suspects beat Quintanilla to death after hearing he had allegedly abused their 9-year-old sister. So, a child. Come on now. Christian and Juan are being charged with capital murder, while all 3 teens are being charged with aggravated assault, family violence, and engaging in organized criminal activity, police told KRGV. And this is another thing about the hypocrisy of this illusion of justice in America. They sit up here saying, first and foremost, look at the names of the charges. They already have a name for this. Capital murder, aggravated assault, family violence, and engaging in organized criminal activity. They tried to charge them with everything that it fell under, and it's crazy how in America you can get charged or convicted more for a crime. How should I say this? Pretty much, they're likely for murder, which is really just the protection and avenging of their 9-year-old sister. They're going to get more time than he got. Being a convicted pedophile, being someone who has a history and a record, and who has eluded police for 6 years, he wasn't locked up. Even the accusations that were brought up before, he wasn't locked up for life. They might lose their lives for defending their 9-year-old sister, because who's going to defend her? She's 9. There was nothing she could do against a 35-year-old man. Who knows if she can even articulate or explain what's going on and this is what happened. So they took matters into their own hands, and now they're being charged with all these different charges for having done so. That's justice in America. The pedophile walks off free. Yeah, we'll look for him. The kids who stop him, they're criminals. They're terrible. I mean, come on now. When asked about the possible involvement of the boy's mother, Harvey said they're still all part of the open investigation, and that's certainly a question that we had, why we weren't notified and that kind of thing. So there's more questions out there, and that's something that we're still looking into. They're trying to figure out, well, why didn't we know? Well, I mean, they did what had to be done. What is there to know, whether she knew or not? Wasn't like she partook in the murder or in the judgment. But there's that. So let me see. Yeah, those boys are in Texas, and as far as I know, be awaiting trial. Woman celebrating birthday killed in a targeted ambush in LA house party shooting. A woman celebrating her birthday and her sister were among the 4 victims of a deadly targeted ambush early Sunday morning at a house party in California. The shooting occurred about 1:30 a.m. in the 1300 block of North Park Avenue in Inglewood, according to the LA Fire Department. 3 people were pronounced dead at the scene, and 2 others were transported to a hospital. Family members who spoke with our sister station KABC on Sunday said the party was being held for Brianna Steins, who was celebrating her 20th birthday. So imagine that. She's 20 years old. They're having a party, and somebody runs in there targeting them and kills, 4? 3 were dead at the scene, 2 others transferred to a hospital. So killed 3, wounded 2. They say her 25-year-old sister, Marnisha Hamilton, was also killed. Investigators said one of the victims rented the home for the party. The surviving victim, a man, was listed in critical condition. That person has an extensive criminal history and indicated he had a gang affiliation, according to Inglewood Mayor James T. Butts. Butts described the incident as a targeted ambush, adding that multiple suspects were involved and shell casings from an assault-style rifle were found at the scene. At least 1 handgun was also used. He said this is the deadliest crime scene in a single home or a single location in the city of Inglewood since the 90s. So that's where LA is really headed back to. Everybody talks about, like, man, this generation and back in the 90s, back in the day. Well, you ain't got to keep talking about back in the day. It's coming back. It's coming full circle. Crime rates are up. Homicide rates are up. People running in. I mean, they ran in a party. Plenty of witnesses. Killed 3 people, critically wounded 2 others. And they said, man, we haven't seen nothing like this since the chaos of the 90s. Look at this. I will bring every single gun loaded. Virginia mom threatens school board over the mask mandate. So you have a whole lot of, you have COVID being ramped up. You have these crimes in individuals. You have, the assaults, the crime, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have people that are just losing their stuff because they're tired of COVID and all these mandates and all these requirements. A Virginia parent opposed to mask mandates threatened to bring loaded guns to school Monday if her child was forced to wear a mask. The parent, Amelia King, 42, allegedly made an oral threat on school property after she was cut off during a public comment section of the Page County Public School Board meeting Thursday. The school board voted in favor of making masks optional for students beginning Monday. That follows an executive order by Governor Glenn Youngkin giving parents the choice to send their children to school masked or unmasked. Not all area schools are following the executive order. Nearby, both Staunton and Waynesboro public schools had said they will continue to require masks. All right, no mask mandates, King told board members before the vote and during the meeting's public comment section after her 3-minute comment period ended. The meeting can be viewed on YouTube. My children will not come to school on Monday with a mask on. That's not happening, and I will bring every single gun loaded and ready. So, it's really a big divide that's happening. A lot of people are proudly wearing the I got vaccinated stickers and pins, and a lot of people are saying, look, I'm not with that. Don't put that on my child. Don't put this. Don't do that. And then you see that the government is already ramping up. They already have internment camps. They already have things set up. And so that's why I said, how this is all going to play out, because it's experimental. But there are people out there, if she willing to kill for a mask, she don't even want to hear, give them a jab and counseling and all that. So, things have been different. And then on top of that, look at all the other stresses and effects that COVID has. Over 1,300 LAPD employees out sick from work due to COVID. More than 1,300 employees in the LAPD are currently either recovering from COVID or quarantining due to exposure. Now, LA, I think, has a rate of like 1 officer to every 444 people. Now, you have 1,300 officers that are off duty right now on account of some kind of COVID-related incident, either exposure, they're sick themselves, family member, whatever. The LAPD has seen 910 new positive tests in the last 2 weeks, he added. That number includes 735 officers and 225 members of the department's support staff. As of January 6, LAPD has about 9,500 sworn officers in its ranks. The COVID infections and exposures have had substantial impact on police deployment. We're looking at contingency plans now and monitoring the high number of employees out of work. Contingency is like a fallback. Pretty much, the LAPD, and that's why you see everybody's taking advantage of this. People are seeing, okay, there are less cops on the streets. 1,300 of them are already out sick. And I'm assuming that's out of the total of 9,500. So you got 9,500 sworn officers. What does that put us at? 8,200? And a lot of that is also support staff. Not all of them are peace officers. Not all of them are in the field. Not all of them, ride around in vehicles. And then you have even less that are actually capable of doing what they do right now. So that's why you see crime rates skyrocketing, people breaking in, skyrocketing, all these different schemes, because people calling the police, and there ain't no police. They spread thin. LA is one of the most populous counties. I think LA County has more of a population than 48 states, not combined, but individually, all right here in one city. So you already have a lack of officers on a good day, but because of COVID, because of the mandates, because of people that are getting sick, there are just less and less people to be able to actually answer. That's why Christ said in these last days, let me find this. In these last days, you're going to have a sword. Because it's that important. There go another one. Look, sirens running up and down the street all the time. People doing burnouts. Like it's LA is becoming very quickly becoming the wildlands. It's going back to how it was in the 90s. It's getting that serious. The crime rate is up. The killings are more brutal, more merciless. And there isn't, we already have that vain hope in Esau, but even Esau is like, hey, we don't have nobody to send. There's not enough people. There's not enough officers. We're not able to actually deliver. Let's get that in Luke 22 and 36. Luke chapter 22 and verse 36. And he said unto them, but now he that hath a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scrip. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. So Christ was saying, look, you ain't got no sword. You ain't got a way to be able to protect yourself or be able to, defend, hold down your territory, whatever. He said, go sell your garment. Go get rid of something that you may not need as bad as you're going to need as that sword. I always took that as you don't need a sword before you need the clothes on your back. You can get cold and survive that. But you need something to be able to defend, something to be able to go to war with, because that's what it's becoming. We get used to it because we're so desensitized. Growing up in LA, hearing the sirens every day, hearing the helicopters fly over the house, a couple times a night, if not every night, it becomes normal. This war zone of our lives is like, it's just another day in LA. But this is a war zone. People getting rushed to the hospital constantly. Officers and authorities not able to actually control or get a hold of the situation. The chief of police is already saying, look, we're looking at fallback plans. They said plan A is already out the window. They're trying to figure out how are they going to recover? What can they do in the meantime? And then ultimately it's just going to progress into more and more government being involved. Then it's just going to be soldiers to hit the streets, because we've already seen that in the 90s. LA calling the National Guard, calling the military. How long until it's just full-blown martial law? On top of COVID, on top of internment camps, on top of stuff crashing into the moon, and objects in space being discovered that they don't know the purpose of. We're getting closer and closer to that time, man. On January 4th, when more than 400 LAPD officers and 200 LA City firefighters called in sick that week, the firefighters who missed their shift due to illness caused an incremental delay and response times for medical and fire emergencies. So it's only so much you could really do, because these are all jobs that have to be done by people. And the people that are responsible for these things are all getting sick. They can't be of any good to themselves if they themselves are sick, or they themselves are wounded, or are in need of healing. So, you know, you really see the strain that everything is putting on the infrastructure of California, of LA, and America as a whole. It's only going to be so long before it's not enough for people to call on. You see movies like Judge Dredd, you know, I, Robot, things where they're trying to outsource, or things where the world is already so chaotic, so they had to implement some kind of extra source or whatever. You see all those things. And ultimately, just like if you see in Judge Dredd, it was a good movie because it really shows how quickly the world descended into chaos without that that overseeing government that Esau has tried so hard to create. They said, look, there's like this many crimes per day. We can only respond to this percent of them. Their whole philosophy was like, look, we get to choose which crimes we're going to. Make no mistake, we're close to that, where it's going to be, okay, we got to decide. This person is, got robbed. This person is shot and is bleeding. Well, if you got robbed, you're just going to have to figure it out. We can't get there. We won't be able to show up. Your stuff's already gone. We won't be able to recover it anyway. It's going to get to that place where they have to make executive decisions. The same way that they did with COVID, saying, look, who's sick and who's sick. The person is sick, okay, they need a bed in the hospital. You sick, you go home. Go home and come back if you can't breathe. It's already at that level. It's already there. But yet Esau has us so convinced that this world is like, man, this world is tilting. It's been leaning. It's on the verge. It's leaning to the point. It's just to the point of no return. Like, okay, it's about to collapse. You can see it. Everybody can see it. And then it's out of the frying pan and into the fire. So if you don't have a sword, Israel, get you a sword. Get you something to protect yourself. Utilize your resources while we have those options. Here we go, right? Talking about the police that are off, the firefighters that are off. Homicides rose 94% in LA County from 2019 to 2021. Auto thefts up 65%. So they talking about, this is one of the worst hits since the 90s. Oh, this has been the safest 10 years. Well, it's going back. 94%? That's massive. Los Angeles, homicides and auto thefts spiked from 2019 to 2020 in areas policed by the LA County Sheriff's Department. Villanueva presented year-end statistics for 2021, but said it was too early to draw any conclusions about trends in the 12 days of 2022. Because we're only 2 weeks into the new year, statistically, it's going to be all over the map, the sheriff said. Department data for the year ending December 31st, 2021, showed a 2-year jump. This is comparing 2019 to 2022. That was a 94.24 increase in homicides. Huge number, Villanueva said. A 64.88% in grand theft auto. That's the bad news. So you got a massive influx of not only murders, but also car thefts. And even if people do get, you got full insurance, your brand new car gets stolen, you owe 22, it's worth 30. You get cashed out, but there's a microchip shortage, so you might not even be able to go get you a new car. I mean, look at that. It's going to be a chain reaction. As soon as the right domino gets knocked over, it's going to all be, it's already been set in motion. It's, when you read all of this stuff together, it becomes pretty wild that we're still going to work. We still clocking in, and look at the state of the world. You got tsunami war. I mean, look at all the stuff that's going on, and we're still just living our lives. That's the illusion of America. That's the sweet poison of America. Is because it seems like it's all good and we pretty much live normal lives for the most part. But make no mistake, everything's getting worse. Everything's getting worse. But that's what the scripture said it would be. Like a woman in travail getting closer to having that baby, those contractions get more frequent and intense. There ain't things happening in the earth. before Yahushua be brought forth, before he delivers us. Getting more frequent and more intense. In 2019, there were 145 homicides recorded in the county, while there were 199 in 2020. While Villanueva did not specify the number of 2021 homicides recorded, his math would put the total at around 281. So that was almost a person a day. There was also a 14% increase in aggravated assaults, though rapes and robberies dropped 11.7% and 24% respectively. As a result, overall violent crimes were up roughly 1%. A lot of these have to do definitely with the pandemic and just the changing social patterns of behavior and who's at home and who's not. The 2019 statistics reflect a pre-pandemic world, while 2021 included the winter surge in cases that prompted restrictions on businesses and gatherings, as well as a more open public health stance going into the summer. We had a big drop in burglaries, 19.39%, because everybody's home. Villanueva said, pointing to the drop in larceny and theft for the same reason. Still, property crimes were up slightly, increasing with a 4.35% increase over the 2 years. LA to consider $60,000 reward in search for killer of a 16-year-old found on the side of the freeway. Imagine this. The Los Angeles City Council and the County Board of Supervisors on Tuesday are set to consider offering a combined $60,000 reward for information to find the killer of 16-year-old Tsunami, hopefully I'm saying that right, Theus, who was left dead on the side of the freeway. The teenage girl was shot in the neck and dumped near the Manchester off-ramp of the 110 freeway in South Los Angeles. Her body was found on January 8th. With the killer still not found, her family has been urging officials to set up a reward for information, contrasting the girl's case to that of Brianna Kupfer, whose killing in Hancock Park garnered $250,000 in reward money. On Tuesday, more than 2 weeks after Theus's body was found, LA County Council members Curran Price and Marquise Harris Dawson are introducing a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of those responsible for her killing. Tiani was a young lady with so much promise, joy, and spirit, with God-given gifts and talents to give the world. She has so much to live for and countless unfinished dreams, Price said in a statement. It's disheartening to know that the person or persons responsible for her killing are still on the loose while a family and entire community continues to grieve in search for answers. Theus was last seen on January 7th before she left her Compton home to meet an Instagram friend to go to a party. Her body was found the next day, miles away from home. She was thrown on the side of the freeway like trash, Theus's cousin Lakeisha Barnett said during a vigil for the girl. So, I mean, come on now. You can't tell me, you can't say LA has had the safest 10 years, and I mean, look what's going on. I don't know. That just means the 10 years ago it was extra terrible, and now it's just terrible. Tens of guns stolen. You can take us back to the PowerPoint. Tens of guns stolen in Los Angeles rail cargo thefts, police say. Thieves breaking into freight trains in Los Angeles have stolen guns from cargo containers. Moore told the city's Board of Civilian Police Commissioners on Monday that tens of firearms have been stolen. That gave us the great concern as a source again of further violence in the city, as people were capitalizing on the transport of these containers with having little or no policing or security services there. So everything's spread thin. You know, the labor shortage, the police shortage, the LAPD, the LAFD, no one's really there to protect the goods. So they got tens of firearms. So all the thousands of firearms that they say that they're able to pull off in a year, they're going to be giving a lot of it back because they're not even able to protect the things that they're seizing, and they're not able to protect the things that are being shipped in. Union Pacific spokesperson Robin Siver said the railroad has brought in dozens of special agents to help and will continue to monitor and clean up the tracks, but declined to comment on the gun thefts. California Governor Gavin Newsom has promised statewide coordination as law enforcement and prosecutors go after thieves who have been raiding cargo containers aboard trains near downtown LA for months, leaving the tracks blanketed with discarded boxes. So this isn't even something new. People, I mean, they got to understand that it's going to be a risk with shipping things. So they shipped in however many tens of guns is and hope it made it, but they, you know, it's just, it's litter everywhere, and they got to clean up the tracks because there's so much stuff that's being stolen right out of the box. I mean, look at that. Look at this. Look at all the stuff that's being stolen out of the train as it's moving. This ain't even at a station. I don't think, you know, obviously it's not flying. It's carrying however many cargo cars, but they just snatching stuff right off the train. And they don't have anybody to really be able to stop them. They're saying they're going to keep coordinating with law enforcement, but when you have so many officers that are off work, calling off sick, getting sick, or actively quarantining, who are these officers supposed to be? Who is that going to be? You know, it's been the expectation since forever that if you call 911 that somebody's going to show up. Now, I'm not advocating for the police or nothing like that. And, you know, we don't really believe in calling, you know, that is what it is. But, you know, so many people do rely on that, and so many people look for that. But there isn't anyone that's going to be available. They only have so many officers. So many of them are quarantining and, you know, tied up in this and that. And then they're also spread thin. LA County is huge, full of people. They're not even able to address every crime at this point. Some things just like this, they've been doing this for months. They talking about they bringing in agents. Where? When? It's been going on for months. They're not able to stop it, at least not entirely. The train thieves are equally organized and need to be prosecuted as such. Look at that. It looked like a third world country, these images. The drone images that were on the nightly news, Newsom told reporters, gathered Thursday along the cleaned up tracks. Just a couple more. Matter of fact, I'm just for the sake of time, I didn't realize how late it was getting. Look into this one, a synagogue in Texas. Man goes in there. He had held some hostages. I think he had like 3 hostages in there. He ends up being killed. They end up saving the hostages, but he had a 10-hour standoff with police in a synagogue. Look at this. That's when I do want to play for you. You see, like I said, all these movies and TV shows, all that kind of stuff, that's just predictive programming. What does this one remind you of?
Grabbed us. One of them had a small handgun on him, pointed it to my head, told me to give him my watch, my bag, and my phone. I wouldn't want to come back here again. After that,
and I saw him walk out, and I just seen sheer terror. She was screaming like, oh my God, facing that way, you could kind of see through the window. And once I looked down, I said, oh my God, that's the young lady that works in the store.
Grabbed us. One of them had a small.
So like they're saying, so 24 hours of terror. So all these things, I guess it was like a huge spike, even though they say they can't say statistically all the stuff that's going on in 2022. You know, they see a huge spike just within a 24-hour period, just like everybody's favorite, The Purge. All these movies, and you know, they say is life imitating art or is art imitating life. Either way, it's whatever. All this stuff that we see in all these TVs and these movies, it's coming. It's really happening. Drive-through shooting. LA man charged with murdering a Taco Bell worker who died in front of his son. I mean, imagine that. A 39-year-old man was charged Wednesday with murdering an employee at a Taco Bell restaurant in South LA. Jonathan Madden pleaded not guilty to 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Alejandro Garcia Galicia, 41, was working with his 19-year-old son at the fast food restaurant near the intersection of Century and Avalon Boulevard Saturday night when he was shot and killed. Investigators said the shooting stemmed. This is the crazy part. The shooting stemmed from an argument that started when Garcia's son allegedly refused to accept what appeared to be a counterfeit $20 bill from a customer at a drive-thru. Imagine that. Let's go over to Matthew chapter 24. Let's get verse 12. I said we almost done. 2 more. Matthew 24:12. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. That's what you really starting to see. You're seeing a lot of people that just don't have no care, no concern, no compassion for their fellow man, for their fellow Israelite, for their fellow nation, their sister or brother. He shot a man over what appeared to be a counterfeit $20 bill. First off, bro, you know, if it's a fake 20, you knew you was going there with a fake 20. If somebody caught on to it, he got so upset. Like, bro, if you had a gun, just take your food. And not like that. Not that I'm saying any of it is lawful or you could advocate for any of it, or I'm advocating for any of it. I'm not advocating for any of it. But if you're going to do anything, you could have at least saved this man's life. But people are to the point where there's so little love, so little care. He was willing to kill him. Drove off, food or not. He was like, man, he got so upset, got so angry, shot the man. Killed him. Over $20? And a fake 20 at that? Over some Taco Bell? You wanted the Taco Bell that bad? That you killed this man because he wouldn't give it to you for in exchange for a fake 20? See, the love of many is waxing cold. Citigroup to fire unvaccinated employees this month. So same thing because of the mandates, because of COVID or the vaccine being pushed so heavily. A lot of people that are losing their jobs and losing their livelihoods ultimately because these jobs are requiring that you get vaccinated. And if you don't get vaccinated, as a company policy, they have the right to fire you. Citigroup staff in the U.S. who have not been vaccinated against COVID-19 by January 4th will be placed on an unpaid leave and fired at the end of the month unless they are granted an exemption, a source familiar with the matter said on Friday. So I remember reading about how in the beginning of all this, they were saying that there wasn't going to be a mandate, but that companies have the right to, introduce policies as they see fit. There it is, framing the mischief by law. They're like, okay, the government won't require it, but I mean, what does that matter if all the jobs and all the companies do? So who knows, that there's going to be a bunch of employees at the end of this month across, that includes JP Morgan, Chase, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley. So those are 3 big banks. You're talking about people in their corporate, their processing, their branches. All of those who are not vaccinated, they're going to be put on an unpaid leave, and if they refuse by the 31st, by the end of the month, which is only 4 days away now, they'll be terminated. It's the last one, and I put this one there for a purpose, because we right here at the end. Scientists think we're closer to the end of the world than ever. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, a nonprofit group of scientists and security experts who monitor the possibility of Armageddon caused by humans. Imagine that, that they have a whole department set up for when Armageddon is going to happen, and especially caused by humans, has moved the Doomsday Clock 100 seconds to midnight, the closest to midnight the clock has ever been in its 75-year history. Humanity continues to face 2 simultaneous existential dangers, nuclear war and climate change, that are compounded by a threat multiplier, cyber-enabled information warfare that undercuts society's ability to respond. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists said in a statement, the international security situation is dire, not just because these threats exist, but because world leaders have allowed the international political infrastructure from managing them to erode. According to the Bulletin, the Doomsday Clock is a visual representation of how close humanity is to ending itself. Every year since the clock's inception.
I was looking at different banks and Union.
Oh, there. Every year since the clock's inception in 1947, the groups of scientists and experts gather to discuss the possibility of the end of the world and adjust the clock accordingly. It's meant as a warning. So imagine that, right? They have a visual representation of a clock, just saying, this is how close we think we are to the end. Obviously, when it strikes midnight, that's it. They saying they looking at everything that's happening. Mind you, as far if it's striking till midnight, it must be on a 24-hour basis, which sounds like a lot of time. But since 1947, you only have 24 hours to work with, and they're looking at everything. They say, yeah, you might want to bump it up about 2 minutes. We get about 2 minutes closer to midnight because look at all the stuff that's happening. At 100 seconds to midnight, 100 seconds to midnight. Oh, we're close. I thought it was 100 seconds closer to midnight. No, that's 100 seconds until midnight. The Bulletin is saying it believes Earth is closer to global disaster than at any other time in its history. Both Russia and the U.S. pulled out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019, a Cold War-era pact that prohibited cruise missiles and land-based ballistic missiles with ranges between 311 and 3,420 miles. In the weeks after leaving the treaty, both Russia and the U.S. started testing new nuclear weapons. So imagine that. So the scientists that are looking at all these things, they say, look, we're 100 seconds. Imagine that. Imagine if it was a 24-hour period, just like a regular day, and you're saying, okay, the world ends when this clock strikes midnight. They're saying we have 100 seconds left. Russia and the U.S., they've had Cold War era treaties implemented to not experiment with nuclear weapons, saying that, hey, we can all agree this is too dangerous. It's extremely destructive. Let's put this away and not deal with it. Both of them are like, all right, I'm done. And they both immediately started testing. Because clearly everything in the world right now, everything's gearing up for war. Everything. Less police, higher crime, less supplies, less responders, less help, less infrastructure, more brutality. We're only getting closer. Just getting closer. New START, an Obama-era treaty limiting the number of missiles the U.S. and Russia can deploy, will expire in February unless it's renewed. Russia has said it wants to renew the treaty, but America is dragging its heels and indicating it may let the treaty lapse. As these treaties fail, both sides are developing new types of nuclear weapons aimed at circumventing existing defense systems. So they're both trying to come up with nuclear weapons that'll be able to get through anything that the other country or any country will be able to defend against. They're just coming up with the perfect bombs. That's basically all they're doing. Spending all their time, spending all this money, and creating the perfect bombs to be able to have extreme range and to have extreme ballistic capabilities or nuclear capabilities. It's the last thing I'll read. It says, after its formation in 1947, the Bulletin set the clock to 7 minutes to midnight. So even in 1947, they already put it at 7 minutes. They already understood that there is more time passed than we have time left. And in 1947, they gave 7 minutes to the end. Here we are in 2022. It says, after the Soviet Union and the United States tested the first thermonuclear bomb in 1953, the clock ticked to 2 to midnight. So what is that? 6 years? 7 years? No, 6 years. 6 years after it was made, this visual representation of the end of the world, when the first thermonuclear bomb was tested, they already was like, well, you could take 5 minutes off the clock. That already ate up majority of our time because now humans are actually capable of causing the Armageddon themselves. At the end of the Cold War, the clock ticked back to 17 minutes to midnight. So they was like, okay, we might have some hope. In 2018, look at that. I don't know if you guys could hear all those sirens, but about 6 cop cars and I want to say 2 fire trucks just flew by. Like I said, we're in a war. We're literally in a war zone. We are in the war zone. This is the same stuff that's taking place in the Middle East. Every time they go to the Middle East, they go to Syria, they show the aftermath of bomb attacks and explosions. You just hear sirens everywhere. You just see people running for help, trying to find peace, trying to find shelter. The same thing is occurring in LA. The same thing is occurring in America, period. But we just getting a firsthand experience of seeing these constant sirens, the constant gunshots, the helicopters, the back and forth. these forces are overwhelmed. The workforce is overwhelmed. The supply chain is lacking, and even the people that have been employed to be able to hopefully restore order, their hands are beyond filled. That's why that clock said it's getting closer and closer. In 2018, amid rising tensions with North Korea and Trump's fire and fury rhetoric, the Bulletin moved the clock to 2 minutes to midnight, where it sat through 2019. The move to 100 seconds is unprecedented. So you can look into that if you're interested. It's just Esau's visual representation. As you can see, it's purely emotionally and observationally based, because it went from what it started off as 7 minutes up to 17 minutes. Now it's back to 2, and then it dropped recently to 100 seconds. So, mic test. Everybody knows. Anybody can see, looking at the world as it is, looking at the economies across all countries, the civilizations, the interactions, the crime rates, the mandates, the laws. Anyone can clearly see, okay, we're getting close. We're getting much closer to the end. And, ultimately, let me finish this off. One more scripture. The time is now. That famous song, the time is now. No better time than now to turn back to God. Because we really don't know how much time we have left. And anyone, even Esau, acknowledges that we don't have long. Sirach chapter 5 and start at verse 6. And say not, his mercy is great. He will be pacified for the multitude of my sins. For mercy and wrath come from him, and his indignation resteth upon sinners. Make no tarrying to turn to the Lord, and put not off from day to day. For suddenly shall the wrath of the Lord come forth, and in thy security thou shalt be destroyed and perish in the day of vengeance. So that's for all of us. We don't have much time left on this earth, to be able to cut off our bad habits, to be able to reconcile, Most High willing, with the Lord, and to be able to really try to present ourselves as that sacrifice. Because, we're almost out of time, and the Most High said, don't wait. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know, no man knoweth the day nor the hour except the Most High himself. So I hope this was edifying, Israel. Please continue to tune in and to support our other classes. Continue to help us spread the word, spread the gospel, so that we can be laborers in this harvest that the Most High has called us to, and Most High willing that we can get those final numbers of those that are sealed for the Most High's kingdom to come into the laws and the commandments and the truth. All praise to the Most High, Israel, and Shalom.